YouTube Ozick going. The Goat House is back. Going over the 8 NFL head coaching job openings. Some big ones. I think there's legit job openings here. Some legit jobs that candidates. I think the jobs are better than the candidates, if that makes sense. I mean, for future, like cap space, draft pick, current players, like current talent on the team. So it's an incredible time to be a legit head coaching candidate. So I'm going to make predictions, way too early predictions in this video. It's been requested a ton on Twitter that I make predictions. Again, I think it's a little early. I guess it's never too early. We've been accurate on some predictions in the past. It's a video we're probably going to do again in the near future as we get more info. But I'm going to give a lot more than just a single candidate prediction. We're going to talk about a bit more for all 8 of these NFL teams. So excited to join us for our offseason content like this. Join us for our playoff content. Like, subscribe to No Gates On. Follow us on Twitter. Links in the comments for that, and our sponsors, Liquid IV and GLD Shop, code GO. Let's start with the Raiders. Been saying this for a bit. It's between Antonio Pierce and Jim Harbaugh. I think you out there, you believe that as well. I think it's becoming more and more evident what Pierce has done with the Raiders since he's taken over has been impressive, very impressive. It feels like he's got the players with him, behind him. Very good motivator. Obviously, he knows the game of football. He's played at the highest level. He's played in the NFL. Harbaugh, obviously a legendary coach. You're going to get a good coach with him. You're going to get a good coach. Just won the national championship, even though we're aware that he can coach in the NFL. But it is different, coaching the college right now. So it's not. Is it going to be instant success just because he won a national championship? It doesn't really work like that, but it could be, I guess. I think they want Jim Harbaugh, Mark Davis. It's the Raiders. They want that splash hire, and they know what they're going to get from Jim Harbaugh. It's a pretty appealing spot. Pretty solid cap space. Pretty solid draft pick. Some talented players there. Devontae Adams, Max Crosby. There's more than that, but talented players there. In an interesting decision when it comes to the quarterback position. So I think they want Jim Harbaugh. I think they have Antonio Pierce in mind as well. I think they should go with Antonio Pierce. Like, after what he's done, how could you not? You could say, well, chances are Harbaugh's going to be better. Yeah, how long is he going to be around? He's more of an old school guy. Things are changing in the NFL. Things are a lot different than college, even though he's proven he can coach in the NFL. I think a guy like Pierce, an up-and-comer, a guy that's played in the league, a guy that we know is a good motivator. We know he can prepare his team. We know the players like him and can connect with them. That actually could be the safer option. So I'm not totally against with them going Harbaugh. I'm just saying they probably should go with Antonio Pierce. I'm going to predict Pierce. It's kind of 50-50 on where I think Harbaugh goes. I'm going to say 51% where I have him going and 49% right here. I was originally going to predict Harbaugh when making this video when we were whipping the graphics up here. I'm going to go with they go with Pierce. Well, actually somebody else goes with Harbaugh and then the Raiders go with Pierce then. Second guess would be Harbaugh. If he doesn't end up going this other spot that I'm talking about, I think he comes here. I think he goes to Vegas. In the wild card, I go with David Shaw. I heard his name popped up. His name popped up last year as he was out of the Stanford job, and he's kind of a well-known coach, another college coach like Harbaugh. Stanford, took over for Harbaugh at Stanford. Actually, that just hit me now. I knew that, but almost forgot for a second. So that's it. I heard his name pop up for the Raiders. It was quite a few months ago. But I heard it was almost like it's going to be Shaw or Pierce, and now we throw Harbaugh in the mix. So I think David Shaw, the former Stanford coach who doesn't have a job right now, I think that's a solid wild card. I don't know if I would hire him. I'm not really saying, he's an okay hire probably, but I'm not saying solid in terms of his coaching talent level. I'm just saying it's a pretty good wild card pick to throw in there when it's really probably between two guys. So that's where I'm at with the Raiders at this way too early stage. Again, we'll do this video probably in the near future as we learn more. I'll probably change some predictions, some thoughts. But to the Chargers, who I'm predicting to get Jim Harbaugh, I think it's between the Chargers and the Raiders. Other teams, could the Seahawks, we'll talk about the Seahawks, but could they, get in the mix? Some of these other teams want to go with like really young coaches, kind of where the NFL is heading, and they want, they don't want to have to hire somebody, if they were, some guy retires and not too long from now. They want to, when you're hiring a coach, you want that marriage to last forever, right? So I think they want Jim Harbaugh as well. I think they should be a little bit more interested in Bill Belichick. They're both legendary coaches. Belichick, more of that legendary coach, especially in the NFL. And again, Harbaugh's coached well in the NFL. But it's a little tricky with the Chargers because do they want to like start over? Do they want a young coach? They could. But I think Belichick, and the last time he's had a great quarterback and Tom Brady, they did some damage. Like he knows how to get the job done. Obviously, we know he's going to coach a good defense. It feels like no matter who's out there, obviously he's had some talented players, but it feels like a lot of times he made the talented players on defense. So I think this instantly helps the defense, and they already have talented players. Guys like Derwin James, I think, perfectly fits Bill Belichick's defense. They have solid pass rushers in there. I think he'll find talent for the interior, which they definitely need. He always has the linebackers playing in the corners, playing at a better level than how they look on paper. So I think this instantly makes what we expected the defense to be for the Chargers. And then offensively, does he directly call the offense? No, but him being able to work with a great quarterback, elite quarterback like Justin Herbert. He's been around that. Tom Brady's the greatest of all time, so a little different, and I think he knows what needs to be done to get them where they should be. Like, this team's been disappointing. You have that great of a quarterback, and it's not like you haven't had talent. He's going to get them somebody needs to get them where they should be. Are you going to take a shot at a young guy and you still don't know how he'll be as a head coach? And it could be the same thing as Staley. It's like, all right, this guy's still learning, and we just paid Justin Herbert. We should be in the playoffs, further than the playoffs. We want to get there now. We want the sure thing. So I think Belichick and Harbaugh make sense in that sense. I like Belichick a little bit better for the reasons I explained. I think Harbaugh more of an offensive-minded guy. He is more of old school though. I think the offense coordinators. I think it's the job sells itself. So I don't think they're going to have a hard time finding an offense coordinator that can call players. That would be with Belichick. I think it can just because Justin Herbert's there. I think guys are going to be throwing their names into that job pool, I suppose. Second guess after Harbaugh, I actually won't go with Belichick. I'll go with Ben Johnson. If they don't get Harbaugh, that's where I think they'll be at. I like that as well. Has done a really good job with the Lions. He's got his own twist on today's era, today's style. The Lions gamble a bit. What I don't like, I like the gambling. Staley did it a bit too. Are they going to feel like it's too much of the same? It's an offensive-minded guy though. But are they going to? The Chargers, is their ownership going to feel that way? We'll see. One thing I don't like about Ben Johnson is like he plays for fourth down a bit. Plays to make what's third and long. Let's make it fourth and short instead of going for that first down. I think with Justin Herbert, that could be a little bit different, though. I think he'll trust the quarterback a little bit more to be able to push the ball downfield on third and long or even third and 7, whatever it may be. So Johnson can work as well. I would like that higher. And then wild card, kind of going back to Belichick. We haven't really heard much about that. People think maybe just because Justin Herbert's there. But I think that's kind of the wild card. I think it's got to be. This is one of the. Some teams are harder to predict right now. I think the Raiders and the Chargers, I think who ends up being their coach is one of the guys that I have listed on these slides here. So, like that, I got to start with the Raiders and Chargers in this video. Next, the Commanders. I'm going to guess that they want, like, in terms of the Raiders and Chargers, I'm pretty confident me predicting who they want is pretty damn accurate. Like, I'm almost saying they want those guys. Some of these other ones, like the Commanders, a little bit up in the air. I don't know for sure yet who they really want. I'm going to guess it's going to be Ben Johnson. With being the offensive mind that he is, they're going from a defensive coach. They have the second overall pick. They're gonna end up with either Caleb Williams or Drake May. You can't say for sure which one yet, but they're going to end up with one of those guys, quarterback of the future. So get an offensive guy to kind of make sure that quarterback works out, to groom him, get the most out of him. So Ben Johnson, kind of the big name for the offensive side of the ball. And that's kind of where the league's heading, is hiring the offensive guy so you get the best offensive guy in an offensive era. So I think that's who they would want. Hiring some advisors from the outside. I think they'd be interested in him too. Should was pretty tough because I'm kind of 50-50. I think Johnson would be a good hire as well. I almost put Ben Johnson here. I have a really solid offensive mind. Going to work with that second overall pick. The downside is his play calling. He plays for fourth down a lot. But a good offensive mind, that could help, again, that second overall pick. Mike McDonald from the Ravens defense coordinator, another young option. He's done a really good job calling that defense. They disguise a lot. They mix things up. He gets the most out of their players. Another solid future coach here. I am leaning with him slightly. I think another situation where if you hire a defensive coach in McDonald, I'm thinking that the offensive coordinator job sells itself, because obviously it's a premium offensive coordinator job because that person knows they will be calling the plays, they'll be running the offense, since a defensive guy is the head coach, and you have the second overall pick, so you get the chance to work with an elite quarterback prospect, whether it's Caleb Williams or Drake May. So I think they'd be able to get a solid young play caller here to work with that guy. So I think you kind of can get both. And it's very hard to find defensive coaches that do it right today, because the offenses are changing so much that only certain defensive guys work. Some of the old school guys are starting to die off a little bit in the NFL world. But another thing too, the Commanders' defense was always supposed to be solid, but they weren't. Like, we expect the last how many years, 3-4 years, especially under legendary defensive minds of Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio, even though they didn't go out that way, that's what they were. And they had really good players, especially on that defensive front. They still got 2 in the interior. And you got solid safeties. You've had some solid corners. You have a first round pick at corner that was a letdown. The defense, that's like a big thing. A big thing is, making sure that second overall pick quarterback is good and the offense is getting going. They have receivers, they have running backs, so again, a main thing is getting that defense where it should be. And a lot of times with hiring a defensive coach, it's a little tricky because this guy runs that scheme, this guy runs that scheme, this guy runs that coverage, that guy runs that coverage. We drafted these guys to fit this, so we need to find this specific thing. That is not going to apply with the Commanders, which is a great thing. It's a great thing. So they are open to any scheme, I would imagine. The key players in that defense, the safeties, the scheme really won't mess with them. And I think mainly the interior defensive lineman, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, I think they're very much scheme versatile. So bringing McDonald, who run more of a 3-4 base with the Ravens, I think these guys can thrive in that, and they can build to fit that defense. They don't have guys that they're stuck with. I think McDonald finds different ways to get pressures. You don't have to get pressure. You don't have to have the elite defensive ends or the outside linebackers in his scheme, to get it. You have to have some solid interior players. They got that, and then getting pressure in different ways results in the secondary playing much better. So Emmanuel Forbes, guy like that, plays much better than the safeties. I see what he's doing with the Ravens safeties. I think it's a really good fit. So that's why, even though I do like Ben Johnson, that's kind of where I'm at with McDonald. I think they end up with one of those guys. It's hard to predict where McDonald's going to go, but I think they end up with one of those guys. Maybe their focus would be a little bit too much on offense because they have that second overall pick, which is okay. The wild card, maybe promoting Bieniemy, wasn't his fault with the struggles this year. And I feel like they had that in mind going into this year that just happened, that they were probably going to promote him. The chances of that happening have kind of dropped off a little bit. Them hiring advisors from the outside doesn't really feel like they're going to promote a guy. Like, you're going to hire 2 advisors, like high-profile advisors, to just promote this guy you had. I don't know if that's right, but it could happen. So, Commanders a legit job, second overall pick, tons of cap space, got good receivers. You got some stud players on defense as well. So that's another one of those legit jobs there, and I really like McDonald and Johnson for them. For the Falcons, I think they want Bill Belichick. This is another really good job, too. A lot of these are really solid jobs. I mean, we talked about Raiders have talent. They have cap space, early pick. The Chargers have Justin Herbert. We talked about how much I like the Commanders' job. I like the Falcons' job a lot as well. Decent amount of cap space, decent draft pick, a pretty good draft pick in the top 10. Pretty good roster. At times this year, it felt like they were quarterback away. Like, if they had an average quarterback, they'd not only be in the playoffs, they might be out, not going to go win a Super Bowl, but they could do some damage. But, if you get, that's with an average quarterback. If you get a better than that, quarterback, they feel like they're a quarterback away. Maybe a pass rusher as well. I keep mentioning that. So that, do they want to mess around with the young guy, experiment like Arthur Smith? It feels like a Bill Belichick type of place. Like, go to Atlanta, really solid roster. Bring Josh McDaniel with you. I know he's failed as a head coach, but he's been pretty good as an offense coordinator. I think they have some players that I think they get the most out of Kyle Pitts. Those running backs, Bijan Robinson, and they can simplify things to whoever the quarterback's going to be. I like it a lot, so I think that's who they want. I think that's who they should get. It makes a lot of sense given where their roster is at. I think it is definitely one of the better jobs. You can argue the top job. You can argue some of these is the top job. It's incredible. The openings this year, I think the openings are better than the actual candidates. That Belichick's a really good candidate. I'm going to predict that Belichick as well. Ben Johnson is one of the top guys that is wanted. So that'll be my second guess. Again, the Falcons have one of the more appealing jobs. Just go out and pick a quarterback, and then, hey, we got a pretty good team. And I'll go with Brian Callahan, the Bengals offense coordinator, for the wild card. He seems to be a popular name right away. Like the first request or the second request for all these teams seem to be Callahan, or not every single one, but so I've noticed that a bit. And he comes from a good tree of coaches, I suppose. Well, if you connect them. And then with the Bengals offense was still somewhat solid, even with star quarterback like Joe Burrow going down and having Browning in there. It's a pretty good sign, but Zach Taylor does call the offense, but seems to be a very popular name. So that's why I threw that in there. I really think Belichick or Johnson makes a lot of sense for the Falcons, for who they're going to get. And then the Patriots, I think they want Mike Vrabel. I think a lot of us believe that. Former Patriot, did a really good job at Tennessee. Obviously not this past year, but they're missing a lot of talent. The only downside with Vrabel is he's kind of stubborn. He's kind of stuck in that old, even though he's not really an old school coach, he kind of is at the same time. His style kind of stuck in that way. Like, we're just going to out physical team. We're going to run the ball first. So does it fit today's era? That's kind of the question. That's why the Titans probably moved on from him, because he's a little stubborn with that. But he wins games. He really knows how to prepare, get his teams prepared. A really good motivator. Good defensive mind, even though he's not going to call the defense. So I think they're going to want him. And it was 50-50 for me on who they should get, in my opinion. Vrabel and Flores. Brian Flores, who was with the Patriots, obviously, is currently with the Vikings as their defensive coordinator, and he helped them pick it up. They didn't end great, but he helped them pick it up compared to last year, like night and day difference. So he is a good defensive coach. But I was originally going to say they probably should get Flores, and my reason for that, Vrabel versus Flores, two motivators, like high-energy guys, can get the team prepared, defensive-minded coaches, both with Patriot backgrounds. Vrabel's probably not going to coach the defense. Flores is, and he's going to coach at a high level. Last time he was coaching the defense, success came to New England. I mean, he didn't bring it to New England, but you get my point. So I was thinking kind of the edge with Flores. Maybe he does come with some baggage. Not really his fault, but maybe there is the media attention, what happened with him a couple years ago. 50-50 for me, so I'll go with Vrabel. And then prediction, I'll predict Vrabel as well. Second guess would be Brian Flores. And then Mayo, who's currently on the staff as a linebacker. Gerard Mayo is the linebacker coach, inside linebacker coach. So throw that as a wild card option there. Heard his name come up for the Patriots. Then to the Titans, who surprisingly fired Mike Vrabel. It's pretty clear they want a young coach, like something to fit today's era, someone they can keep around for a long time. The Titans are pretty tough to know anything right now. I'm going to predict that they want Bobby Slowick, who was with the Texans. He did a good job with C.J. Stroud. The Titans have a guy from the same draft class there, and Will Levis. So could they turn him into, get the most out of him? Obviously, he's shown flashes. So that's probably their thinking. I'm going to put Slowick up there for wanting prediction too, because Rand Carthon is the Titans' new GM. Well, last year he's new GM. He was in San Francisco. Bobby Slowick was there, so I'm sure they know each other. They have that connection, that background. So I thought that's really how I have to do things right now before we hear anything specific on a team like the Titans and who they may hire. So I thought, connecting the dots, that made some sense. I'm going to say should. If you're looking for that young offensive mind and you want to get the most out of Will Levis, then maybe Ben Johnson stands at the top, but will he choose them? Maybe choose some other places instead. The Titans do have a lot of cap space. They have a pretty good draft pick, and they have Will Levis. So the offense, dealing with the offensive line, rebuilding that might be the tough part, but it could be a pretty appealing spot because the draft pick, Will Levis, and the cap space. So maybe, but I'll predict Slowick. I'm not. it's a really good look for Slowick because he was obviously part of the decision of bringing in C.J. Stroud. Not that it was all him, but he also was part of him being as good as he was. I think C.J. Stroud was that talented in general, but Slowick definitely deserves some credit. So are you just going to base everything off of C.J. Stroud looking good? I question Slowick's play calling a little bit, especially when the Texans have a lead. I question it. It's not. Is it god awful? No. Maybe a little conservative here and there. So I would prefer him to stay as an offense coordinator and, kind of prove himself a little bit more as a play caller. So he's probably not going to be under, as of right now, he's definitely not under the should category for me for any team. Second guess, we'll look at a young guy from the defensive side, Mike McDonald from the Ravens, who I like a lot. I really like for Washington. We talked about that. So that'll go to the second guess, and we'll throw Frank Smith in there, maybe a little bit deeper of connecting the dots. He is under Mike McDaniel, who is that 49ers Shanahan background. Rand Carthen was there, with McDaniel. Like Frank Smith wasn't there, so it's a little deeper of a reach in connecting the dots. But I guess it makes, like, system-wise, it kind of makes sense to know what they're looking for, and he's another young option. I think some of these other guys are actually younger, but I want to say Frank Smith is 42. So coming for the Dolphins, if I haven't mentioned that, Dolphins offense coordinator Mike McDaniel is calling the plays, though. But we'll throw him out there. I thought right away I'm like Bieniemy for some just like gut feeling, but I think these guys are more likely here. For the Titans, just look for them to go young is what I'm hearing. I'm not hearing anybody specific quite yet. These are all just early predictions. Panthers, I'm pretty confident they want Ben Johnson. I was confident with that last year. I'm pretty sure they wanted Ben Johnson last year. He pretty much removed his name from the conversation, the other conversations as well. He was going back to the Lions. He was going to wait. You're a smart man because the job opening, for what happened with the Panthers last year, could have been better with them, but how much better? But the job openings that opened up, one of the best years of job openings for candidates. So, but I do believe they want him to get the most out of Bryce Young, the offense. It's who they wanted last year. And they should, because they're desperate to make Bryce Young work. And do you ever agree with the team being desperate? No, but in this case, you pretty much have to be. Like, that's kind of the focus. Bryce Young has to work out. You have to get the offense going. Defense played very well. They have talent, but they do like their defense coordinator, Jero Evero, to make sure that defense is still is good, but do they believe it could be as good without him? I would like them to have the confidence, but we'll see. So I kind of agree with wanting Johnson. Last year, Ben Johnson didn't want them. I'm not going to single out the Panthers, though. I believe he does. He didn't want other jobs as well. He thought about his future. He's going to be better job openings next year. We'll try it again next year. That's the case. So why would he want the Panthers now? Maybe he sits down, watches the tape, or knows enough about Bryce Young and goes, yes, I actually do want that. It's possible. I don't see it. I think he's going to want, he's one of the more high profile guys in this cycle. With other incredible jobs, I think he's going to go elsewhere. So I think he's more of a wild card at this point. Prediction's tough. I think they go with an offensive guy. Like, I got to find a spot to put Mike McDonald, one of the top candidates who's with the Seattle Seahawks, the Baltimore Ravens. We're going to talk about the Seahawks next. So I'm trying to find a spot for him. Again, the Commanders, I think it's Johnson or McDonald, so I don't have a spot for him. Thought about it here since it's like, all right, the Panthers want Johnson. They're not going to get him. They're going to have to go with their second choice. Who the hell are they going to get? But their prime situation is keep Evero, find an offense guy as the head coach, or they could hire Evero. It's why he's on my wild card. You could put Ben Johnson down there as well. I just really think they want an offense coach, mainly for that reason and because they want Bryce Young to work. So Brian Callahan from the Bengals. Why I went with him? He just seems to be like a big name in this cycle. Everyone's interviewing him. Requesting to interview him. He just seems to be a very popular name, what the Bengals have done and what Zach Taylor's done, where he's come from, a really good tree, behind McVay, and then Callahan learning from Taylor, and they've done a good job even without Joe Burrow. They did a pretty decent job. So I'm going to go. This is one where I probably have to update my predictions soon. There's some teams that I'm probably going to stick with it, and some I'm not. So go there. Second guess, Slowick. Again, they want Bryce Young to work. I think they fired guys all over the staff, front office included, because they failed. They made the wrong choice at the quarterback position. So go get the guy that made the right choice, that saw the right things, and that developed that guy and was part of the success. So that makes sense as well. Slowick, he could choose Tennessee over Carolina. I don't know. Right now, I think he's a big name because, he came from San Francisco at one point, but mainly because of how C.J. Stroud ended up. And there's a chance that C.J. Stroud was just that good, and then Slowick, there is some questions with his play calling. So I'm not actually sure how many teams will fully, be interested. So that'd be my second guess, even though you probably can, the way I explained the Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud thing, maybe he's more likely than Callahan. It's tough. Wildcard, Evero or Ben Johnson. Again, I really believe they want Ben Johnson. I believe that's evident, but I just don't think they're going to get him. And then for the Seahawks, and they want Dan Quinn, the Seattle background, the coaching job he's done pretty much everywhere he's been. He even did a good job. He was in Atlanta. And he's done a good job with the Cowboys. He's been declining offers, kind of waiting for this moment. It makes sense for it to happen. And then Pete Carroll is an advisor. We know he thinks highly of Dan Quinn, who is a very likable coach as well. I think they should want Bill Belichick. If you're going to go for the old school defensive-minded coach and you have a pretty damn good roster, they have talent everywhere, I'm going to go with Bill Belichick. And I look at that defense. The defense is improving from where it was. Still needs some work, but they have really solid young players. They're getting better and better. They're going to continue to get better. And they've adjusted a little bit more to a 3-4 base defense, before last year. I think Belichick fits all of that more than Quinn. So if you're going to go for that old school defensive coach, I think to go with the one that fits your players a little more and go with the more legendary one there. So that's where my head's at. Prediction, I'm going to go Quinn. Just makes too much sense. He was declining jobs. He was legit. He was going to get coaching jobs these past 2 years. He was declining them. I think he knew this was coming. He's like, I think he knew sort of it was. I think he thought Pete Carroll was going to retire, and I'm going to take that job, or he was thinking there was going to be a better job at general open in 2024, which he was right. I think people knew this was coming. The job openings are incredible, best they ever been. So it all just makes too much sense right now. Second guess, I haven't heard of anything about Belichick and the Seahawks, but again, it makes sense if you want that old school. If you're good at going that old school guy, can we put Harbaugh up here as well? Go with the most legendary coach of all time. Go with the guy that's going to get the most out of your young defensive players that fits this defense already. They already got talent everywhere on this team, so I think that makes sense. Wild card, maybe they realize all right, enough with the old school guys. We just had one. We want the young guy. We want to get more out of this offense. We have talent everywhere. It's just been inconsistent. It's 1 week it's flashy, 1 week it's not. Maybe they think that the defense will kind of groom itself because how many young good players are on that defense. So maybe they go for a guy like Ben Johnson, and maybe he goes there since this is one of the more appealing jobs. I mean, it's the freaking Seattle Seahawks. They're used to winning. That's the culture there. They have talent on the team, so that could be one of the top jobs there. I can argue. It's not. It's definitely opinion based. Everything's opinion based, but it's hard to disagree. Like if you said the Falcons were the top job and gave me your reasons, I'd be like, you're right. If you said the Chargers were the top jobs throughout because Justin Herbert's there, I'm like, you're right. If you say the Seahawks because this is a team that's going to win football games, they have talent throughout this roster on both sides of the ball. It's a great organization. I'm going to say you're right. The Commanders, you'll say because they have a ton of cap space. They have the second overall pick. I'm going to say you're right. So it's that good of a year, and it's a weird year where I don't have set rankings on, and there's some that are better than others, but it really just depends on the candidate, matching the candidate with the team. So I'm excited about this. I'm definitely excited, but maybe the Seahawks we want to go younger and get that offensive guy, go Johnson. Maybe it's kind of up in the air. It really feels like they want Dan Quinn, with his background for him waiting for this moment. It seems right. It seems not that I 100% agree with it, but it seems like it just seems like what was happening. Maybe not though. We will see. So a lot of people requested this video, so I give it to you right here. And I think there's some good predictions. I like that we don't just do one. I didn't show a team with one prediction. We talk about, especially with so much time to go until we hire coaches here. talk about a bit more than that. So I love doing these types of videos. We have all kinds of offseason videos on the channel, and definitely more to come as the draft, for first free agency, like cuts, trades, all that approaches. We have you guys covered with all of it. And then we have the in-season content, the playoff content rolling out right now, and more to come throughout the playoffs and the Super Bowl. So join us, like, subscribe, turn notifications on, follow us on Twitter. Check out those important links pinned in the comments. Gonna do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.